On Tuesday, March the 19th, 1907, the Coolgardie district of Western Australia experienced heavy unseasonal rain in the nearby town of Bonnievale. In particular, the rain was torrential, and despite desperate attempts to shore up the opening of the Westralia and East Extension gold mine, the water poured in, bringing with it hundreds of tons of silt, timber, sheets of iron, and other debris. When the mine manager realized the danger to the 200 miners working below, he sounded the alarm. However, the man skips, which are small containers used to transport miners up and down the incline shaft, were out of action because of the floodwaters, so the men had to fight their way up slippery ladders in the vertical shaft against the onrushing tide of water. Of the 12 levels in the mine, the 3 lowest, almost up to level 9, were found to be inundated. This is the story of the Bonnievale disaster of 1907. The late 1840s saw a significant event in American history known as the Gold Rush, which occurred along the west coast. However, what many may not be aware of is that a similar event took place in Australia during the exact same time. In 1851, a prospector discovered flecks of gold in a waterhole near Bathurst, Australia, which led to the discovery of more gold in neighbouring states. Victoria, home to Melbourne, had the most significant discovery of gold. The Australian gold rush had a profound impact on the country's national identity and provided an opportunity for people from all over the world to move to Australia. Within a year, over 500,000 people, known as diggers, rushed to the goldfields across the country. Many of these diggers were immigrants from Great Britain, with the rest coming from Germany, Italy, Poland, and the United States. As immigrants flooded the areas in search of gold, the locals felt the need to join in, leaving their stable jobs to seek fortune in the goldfields. As a result, wages in certain areas doubled, as finding workers became increasingly difficult during this time. This gold rush lasted for about a decade, but the infrastructure left behind continued to operate well into the 1900s, with many gold mines remaining operational. The Australian gold rush had a significant impact on the country, not only in terms of its economic growth, but also in shaping its national identity. Although 50 years later, one of those diggers who immigrated from Europe was Modesto Verichetti. Coming from Italy in the early 1900s, Modesto was keen on any opportunity to support his family. Born in 1874 in Corona of northern Italy, Modesto was pushed right outside his first mining job at the age of 13. Cornell being a mining town an hour outside of Milan, so Modesto was destined at an early age to help out where he could inside the mines, quickly marrying his wife Maria in the next few years. She would die while giving birth to their 5th child in 1905. While this was a traumatic event for Modesto's, it was the spark he needed to take advantage of, an opportunity to further his family's wealth and future well-being. For the past few years before her death, his local Catholic church had been suggesting he and other men go to Australia for the plentiful and abundant earnings in the mining field. Finally deciding he wanted to have a chance at making a fortune for his family at the age of 25, he made the move to Australia with his 2 brothers. First looking for work includes Victoria. He and his brothers jumped back and forth from Italy to Victoria over the next couple of years before settling down in 1906 in the town of Bonnievale. Dubbed the Golden Outback of West Australia, Modesto was attracted to the West Australia and Eastern Extension mine that was located here. This extension mine, which was operational for the past several decades, sat between 2 valleys and was at the base of their connection. As this region is usually extremely dry with little to no large rainstorms each year, locals were never concerned about flooding in the area. That was until March the 19th, 1907. Now, Modesto was a tough cookie. As stated before, he had been working in the mine since he was 13 years old, so he knew his way around the shafts like the back of his hand. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen on that fateful day in March. Picture this. The sun was shining bright, the birds were singing, and everything was calm and peaceful. That is, until an unexpected thunderstorm hit the town of Bonnievale. The intensity of the rainfall was so great that it seemed as if the heavens had opened up and were relentlessly pouring down torrents of water upon the unfortunate town. The storm dumped a few years' worth of rain in just 2 hours. Water rushed down every hill in the surrounding area as the local creek overflowed. Within just 2 hours, the town was practically underwater, and the local creek overflowed with a staggering 14 million gallons of water. That's enough water to fill 21 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Chaos and devastation were bound to follow. The extension mine previously mentioned, being at the base of 2 large valleys, was a perfect spot for the water to congregate. As water began pouring into the main shaft, the diggers in the mine were quickly evacuated and promptly left the cave out of fear of being trapped below, and they all thought they were safe. 200 diggers signed up for work that day, and only 199 made it out. Modesto Vericetti was one digger that did not. His workmates remembered seeing him going to level 10 on his own to work on an upward-angled extension called a rise. It became clear that he had not heard the warnings. At the time, being in the L10 section of the mine, Modesto had no time to react as the rushing water caught him by surprise, nearly 1,000 feet below the surface, and he fought his way to safety, knowing he had little to no chance of survival. But he was backed into a corner of the mine, and an air pocket formed, trapping him 720 feet below the surface. At first, the miners who had escaped believed that Modesto had perished due to the immense amount of water that had flooded the main shaft. However, their assumptions were proven wrong after fellow diggers in mine management heard tapping in the miners' code from below, indicating that Modesto was still alive. A rescue team quickly assembled at the entrance of the mine and urgently requested a high-capacity steam pump to be brought in. The high-powered steam pump, which was supposed to rescue Modesto, was pumping water out of the cavern, but it seemed like it was barely making any progress. It being only 1907, with technology not as advanced, this high-powered steam pump pumped water out of the cavern very, very slowly. By a few hours later at nightfall, the water level only dropped by a few inches. Local mining inspector Joshua Crabb reported that the clearing of the shaft would take up to a week, and there is little chance of rescue. Modesto, still trapped deep inside the flooded mine, had captured the world's attention. Newspapers all around the world took this quote and dubbed Modesto Vericetti the entombed man. They published daily papers throughout the ordeal, recounting on Modesto's signalling, calling it pointless and hopeless, saying that he would certainly suffocate or starve before the water level was low enough for rescue. Just when everyone had given up hope, a 7-year-old boy named John, the son of the local mining inspector Joshua, had an idea. "Why don't you use a diver?" he said. His father, realizing the brilliance of the idea, immediately sent for 2 expert divers from Calgary, Frank Hughes and Thomas Hearn. These 2 brave divers had never attempted a rescue like this before, having never dived a flooded cave in all their years of experience. They knew they would need experts in the caving field to assist. Regardless, they were determined to save Modesto. They called on Herbert Hoover, the highest qualified mining engineer in the goldfields that week. Hoover, who was then managing the Gwalia mine in Canada, immediately directed the rescue effort. The world held its breath as the divers prepared to descend into the flooded mine, with only their diving equipment and their bravery to guide them. But the questions remained. Would they be able to reach Modesto in time and save his life? The unfolding rescue mission for Modesto Vericetti was nothing short of a massive undertaking, involving a diverse group of individuals who rallied to save the trapped miner. Over the course of 3 days, the team grew to include more than 160 people, ranging from diggers to police to divers to many other government officials, who all gathered to help rescue Modesto. But despite their best efforts, the divers faced a major setback. They didn't have a long enough air hose to reach Modesto. The nearest one was a whopping 350 miles away in the city of Fremantle, and it seemed impossible to get it to the trapped man in time. That's when the government stepped in and ordered a special speed train, aptly named the Rescue Special, to deliver the hose with unprecedented speed. cutting off 2 hours in the usual 12-hour train ride. Having acquired the air hose, Frank Hughes made his first exploratory dive on the 4th day of their horrific ordeal. But even then, finding Modesto proved to be a difficult task. He and Thomas Hearn made 3 separate descents, 2 on day 5 and another on day 6. It wasn't until the 6th day that the pair of divers located him, after a grueling search. Hughes then resurfaced as Hearn stayed with Modesto, bringing him vital supplies like a powerful electric lamp, food, candles, and even sealed letters of encouragement from his brother Giovanni. The divers had to face the heartbreaking reality that they couldn't save Modesto, at least not with the equipment they had. The ticking clock and the dangerous conditions made it too risky for them to suit up and resurface with Modesto. The divers would resurface without Modesto, as time wasn't on their side. The steam pump was working, but it wasn't enough. The rescue plan became more desperate as Hughes delivered the grim news to Joshua Crabb on day 8 that they were running out of time, and Modesto's chances of survival were dwindling. It seemed like a hopeless situation, until day 9. Their prayers were answered. The water level finally dropped enough for an exit attempt. Thursday, March the 28th, 1907, was the climactic final day of the rescue attempt. The road from Coolgardie was packed with sightseers from an early hour, even though the rescue was not scheduled until later in the day. The divers brought Modesto one last batch of supplies and shared a cigarette with him before tying a rope around his waist and starting the long trek back to the surface through waist and knee-deep muck. Although the water level was low at some stages, the mud and water made it a treacherous journey, with Modesto barely able to keep his head above the water at times. Hughes felt Modesto collapse, so he carried him on his shoulder the rest of the way, where Hearn assisted to get him up to level 9. But he never gave up, and after a total of 206 hours underground, he staggered back to the surface on March the 28th. He was noted to have a peculiar, unhealthy look about him, and, from all appearances, according to a reporter of the day, Modesto looked like he could have been dead. Thus, a remarkable rescue attempt came to its conclusion. Against seemingly insurmountable odds, a man was rescued by a combination of determination, courage, inventiveness, and some degree of luck in what must be one of the most heroic episodes in Australian history. The divers and the mine manager were recognised publicly. Frank Hughes, especially, was given hero status, but, typical of so many of that era, was extremely modest of his role in the rescue and kept out of the public limelight. Modesto described his 9-day ordeal as extremely dark, extremely dirty, and extremely wet, an experience he would never forget. Despite the trauma he endured, Modesto Verricetti continued to live and work in the Western Australian goldfields, but shunned publicity and notoriety, dying at the age of 46 of pulmonary fibrosis. Bonnevale has disappeared with just a sign indicating the town site, amongst the bush where a dramatic event occurred in 1907. But his legacy lives on, thanks to the classic Australian folk group Cloud Street, whose most famous song is dedicated to Modesto's story, called Down the Coal Mine. The city of Calgary also set up a display to honour Modesto's story and the brave men who helped rescue Modesto over a century ago. So there you have it, the incredible tale of Modesto Verricetti. This has been Gripping Horror. I hope to see you in the next one.